I think we should.
What do you think? Okay.
If you can take...
Away we go. There we all are. Hi, everybody.
Oh, hi. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. My name is Cynthia Seguin, and I'm a member of the Benicia-Vallejo American Association for University Women. It is lovely to be serving as host for today's celebration of International Women's Day. A friendly reminder that we are recording, so if you don't wish to be seen, you may turn off your video. We're pleased to welcome members of the general public, as well as members of AAUW. The Benicia-Vallejo and the Danville-Alamo-Walnut Creek AAUW branches are sponsoring this event. So today is International Women's Day, which first began celebrating 100 years ago. So this is a centennial. This year's theme is Women Shaping a More Equitable Future. So it's joyful to be together at this centennial to honor women who have broken barriers, stood up for their rights and the rights of others, broken glass ceilings, and who also bring others along with them. There is still urgent work to do. We have benefited from the valiant women who've gone before us and who fight on today, as well as nurture the next generation of leaders. This month heralds the coming of spring, which symbolizes renewal and hope, especially fitting this year, isn't it? We're starting to get our vaccines. Nature has risen to refresh us. Trees are in bloom, daffodils and yellow blossoms gracing our beautiful newly greening hills. We have made it through one of the toughest 12 months in recent memory: loss, loneliness, uncertainty. Our speakers will begin in just a moment, but our committee thought it would be fitting to pause to acknowledge the challenges that people have been facing, the lives lost, and all of the helpers and healers. So we're going to turn the mute off so everybody can clap and cheer for us as survivors and the collective efforts of women around the world, past, present, and future. Hooray! Hooray! Yay! And now it's my pleasure to introduce the president of the Benicia-Vallejo AAUW branch, a retired anesthesiologist and an extraordinary leader this past year in our community, Jan Leventhal.
Hi. So that was Cynthia, and she's our moderator today, and she's a longtime AAUW member. She has a doctorate in education, and she specializes, among other things, in intercultural communication. Thanks for starting, Cynthia. The AAUW has been empowering women as individuals and as a community since 1881. For 140 years, we have worked together as a national grassroots organization to improve the lives of millions of women and their families. Benicia-Vallejo and Danville-Alamo-Walnut Creek are cooperating as part of the East Bay Interbranch Council today. The AAUW mission is to advance gender equity for women and girls through research, education, and advocacy. Our vision is equity for all, and our values are nonpartisan, fact-based, integrity, inclusion, and intersectionality. Next, we'll have Chris Ritter. She's been a member since 2015 and recently retired from a career as a marketing executive. Chris spent most of her over 40 years working life in the medical equipment industry, leading product development, strategy, and marketing. She holds a bachelor's in biology and master's in bioengineering and an MBA. Chris has served the branch as treasurer and is now serving as president of the Danville-Alamo-Walnut Creek branch. Chris?
Thank you, Janet. And I want to say welcome to everybody. It's so good to see you all here tonight. And the reason this program is inspiring to me is it's about the inspiring lives of some of our own members. And this is one of the ways that AAUW has been important to me, just in connecting with other people within our branch, and now even between the two branches. It's been just a wonderful experience working with the Benicia-Vallejo branch to put this program together. So thank you very much, ladies. And we're really looking forward to it tonight. So to celebrate our progress in leadership, we found this wonderful video that we wanted to share with you. So it's called The Women Are Coming. So without further ado, I'll put that on and see what you think of it. I think I'm putting it on. Just start it. Okay. So isn't that a wonderful video? Woo!
All right.
I love that.
Oh, inspiring indeed. And when I first saw that, I thought, oh my goodness, if our grandmothers could only see this. And I
That's
certainly would want to add the importance of education, I'm sure, in the lives of many of these women. Often education is the key to positive changes in our world. And I'm especially proud that AAUW has awarded over $115 million in fellowships and grants to more than 13,000 scholars in the United States and 150 countries around the world, one of the largest scholarship programs for women. So next, we're delighted to have a welcome and opening remarks recorded by the Honorable Lieutenant Governor Elaine Kunalakis, first woman elected to this office. What an accomplished woman and role model. Let me tell you a little bit about her. Our Lieutenant Governor has worn many hats, mother of two, former U.S. Ambassador to Hungary, businesswoman, earned her MBA from UC Berkeley, and is former chair of the California International Trade and Investment Advisory Council. You see a graphic here of her book, Madam Ambassador, based on her experiences as ambassador to Hungary. I found it a fascinating story of U.S. foreign policy, diplomacy, and leadership I particularly appreciated her insights regarding the rise of nationalism and anti-Semitism in Europe, issues which continue to challenge our world. In her book, she also relays her experiences on a NATO visit to our troops in Afghanistan. She's an advocate for international faith dialogue through her work with the World Council of Religions for Peace, is the daughter of immigrants, and a passionate advocate for education. And now here is our greeting from California's Lieutenant Governor.
Women's Day. I'm especially honored to be here as the first woman elected Lieutenant Governor in our state's history. Tonight, I thought I'd share with you a little bit about myself, my family, and why I am so passionate about college opportunity, accessibility, and affordability. My father grew up in a small village in Greece and came to the United States when he was just 14 years old. He was alone, had no money, and did not yet speak English. He landed in Lodi, California, where he worked as a farm worker after school and on the weekends. Eventually, my father made his way to Sacramento State University, where tuition was $62 a semester, and which he paid for by working as a waiter in the governor's mansion. The education my father received at Sac State changed the trajectory of his life and the lives of everyone in our family. I often think back to his mother, my grandmother. Her name was Katerina. She never left the village where she raised her family during the Second World War, and she never learned to read or write. It was my grandmother who believed so strongly in the American dream that she convinced my grandfather to let my dad leave home, even though she knew she might never see her son again. As Lieutenant Governor, it is my mission to help keep the pathway of the American dream and the California dream open for future generations. Because here in California, one thing we know for sure is that no one knows where talent will come from. So it's up to us to ensure that our energetic, aspiring young women and men have the best possible opportunity to access higher education, which we know is the surest pathway to build a better life for themselves and their families. Thank you very much for having me, and thank you for honoring the accomplishments of women in California, the United States, and around the world.
Yay! So what a great talk from her. That was very nice, I thought.
Yes, we really appreciate the Lieutenant Governor and thank her and her outstanding staff for this greeting. The next part of our program will feature our local leaders, AAUW members from our own communities whose leadership and accomplishments inspire others. They exemplify our theme for International Women's Day, Women Shaping a More Equitable Future. So as we enter this part of the program, I'd like to tell you that we will have a question and answer session after all of these four women have had their chance to speak. And you can use the chat feature in Zoom to submit your questions at any time. It's an honor to introduce our first distinguished local speaker, AAUW member in our Benicia-Vallejo branch, Ms. Elizabeth Patterson. She holds a master's degree in urban and regional planning. In the mid-90s, Ms. Patterson served Benicia as chair of the General Plan Oversight Committee for 3 years and also served on the Benicia Planning Commission. Ms. Patterson was elected to Benicia City Council in 2003 and then served 3 terms as mayor starting in 2007. As Benicia mayor, Ms. Patterson served on regional boards, including Solano Transportation Authority, Marine Clean Energy, North Bay Watershed Association, and Solano County Water Agency. She was elected president of the Northern Division of League of California Cities. As mayor, Ms. Patterson was recognized for campaigning on saving open space, state parks, establishing the Community Sustainability Commission and Arts and Cultural Commission, securing an abandoned school for a community center, which we all enjoy, and also advocating for Benicia as a green gateway to Solano County. Ms. Patterson has been a steady, effective advocate for ending our dependence on fossil fuels in order to avoid tragic climate change consequences. So now she will share her ideas and experiences working for a more sustainable future for our environment. Elizabeth.
Unmute myself. Thank you very much, Cynthia. That was very kind. And thank you to AAUW for giving me this opportunity for celebrating and recognizing International Women's Day. And that was a great video. I want to read my remarks to make sure that I stay within time. I thought that my remarks today should be informative and perhaps instructive. How, why, and when did I set my energies on working for a sustainable future? As so often in my experience, my daughter summed it up at a recent Zoom recognition event to mark the end of my 25 years in city service as described by Cynthia. In the lightning round session, my daughter said that my mom has followed her heart and passion. In a later conversation, she understood for the first time the difference between a career path and the one I chose. That's it, in sum. My life's work has been a sustainable future, although in 1970, at the first Earth Day that I helped organize in my local community, Sierra Madre, I would have said for environmental protection of air, water, land, and its flora and fauna. Maybe not flora and fauna, plants and animals. My approach for this goal evolved from being an environmental activist, protecting our California coast, leading to the Coastal Act, the San Gabriel Mountains from off-road vehicles, stopping supersonic jets, SST, to the United States, to preventing a flood control project drowning the historic Sierra Madre Canyon with its 1920s, 30s summer homes for the Hollywood crowd, to being a charter member of Friends of the Earth, and which was founded by David Brower, and being a major fundraiser for Friends of the Earth. But a move to Ithaca, New York meant a pause in that work. And my activism up to this point was more reactive. A shared interest in the environment with an urban planner, grad student, opened up my understanding that urban and regional planning was the hub to protecting air, water, land, and life for all living things. Returning to California after 5.5 years in New York and armed with a curriculum from my grad student friend, I began my education for a regional urban planner. And taking his advice, I got involved in local issues to learn about how planning really worked outside the classroom. And it actually was a local one in Danville, so feel free to ask me that question. So that's the how and the when. I've been working for a sustainable future, but why? I think in part because I was born in Los Angeles and I watched hills bulldozed, fields of flowers of poppies and lupins disappeared, replaced by housing of no particular grace or beauty. Our drive on eucalyptus-led roads to the beach was replaced by gray and loud freeways. Sunday drives in San Fernando Valley of orchards and fields of grain to more housing lacking in any connection with the land and places that could be any place in the state. Maybe it was the Soil Conservation Service trailer at my LA grammar school depicting photos of the Dust Bowl and stories of contour plowing and water conservation helped shape my thinking that people ignore natural processes at their peril, and soil scientists and the government could correct. I so admired the government, the smart, knowledgeable people doing good, that it still pains me to this day to see the work of these same good people with dams and diversions of water from streams and rivers. Perhaps it was early family dinner conversation while growing up about population growth and responsibilities stuck in my brain, that we should only have children we can support. And later, as Paul Ehrlich wrote in The Population Bomb, only the number that Earth can support. Hence my one adopted daughter and my one grown at home daughter. My spiritual path came by way of John Muir. and his writings about the Sierra, which I experienced in Yosemite at the age of 10. Such joy, peace, beauty, and rock solid earth. Passion and purpose, a pretty good combination for working for a sustainable future. Land and water are the essentials of life. More people value water than land. My job is to help people with their shared values connect with why land use planning and management matter to get right. My first task as a planner is to help people find common ground. It is surprising how much we share and value. What often divides us is the disconnect between decision of land use, which generally are confused with development. Development is not land use planning and management. It's just building things. Land use planning and management is creating or enhancing a village, a town, or a city in a way that avoids putting people at risk, such as flooding or earthquakes. It also avoids disturbing natural functions of watersheds, streams, wetlands, all essential to sustaining life. With watersheds collecting snow and rain to recharge the rivers, which provide aquatic habitat and fish we eat, recharging groundwater, which keeps wells full for irrigation for orchards and crops. Floodplains function to capture floodwater and recharge groundwater. Cities avoiding building on floodplains save lives and cost-effective flood management and water supply. Limiting urban footprint in the watershed means more water percolates through the soil rather than rushing off impervious roads and house roofs and driveways. This too helps with flood safety. Urban planning and management is the most cost-effective way to adapt to climate change. Compact development means walkability, avoiding driving for every little thing like groceries, coffee, childcare, workplaces. It means letting the sediment build wetlands higher for attenuating rising sea level. It means protecting agricultural land for food production. It means a path for clean air, water, and healthy people, avoiding risk from all those things. We don't do any of that very well. So it's my life's work to help us work for a sustainable future. My efforts of healing the earth and keeping her healthy is a great segue to our next speaker, Claudia Schwartz. And I just have to switch over here. So, so this is my introduction. Claudia was born in Cali, Colombia, and raised in the Aicg Cafetero, I hope I pronounced that correctly, a coffee growing region in Colombia. When she was 15 years old, her family immigrated to Houston, Texas, where they lived for a short time before settling in Hightown, New Jersey. Claudia earned her Bachelor of Science in Nutritional Sciences from Rutgers University, followed by her Master's in Public Health in Nutrition and Public Health at the University of California, Berkeley. After her graduate work, Claudia worked for the California Food Policy Advocates, a statewide policy advocacy organization. It was CFPA, where she developed the skills needed to help others achieve a better and more equitable life. After marriage, Claudia dedicated herself to raising her two children, but continued her public health work by volunteering with local nonprofits and working part-time for the UC system as a grants and program manager. Claudia is now retired and continues her volunteerism. She is supporting the deployment of USAID grant to educate rural high schoolers in Armenia, cares for her elderly family members in Colombia, serves as the treasurer for the Danville-Alamo-Walnut Creek AAUW, and freelances for the Contra Costa Regional Health Foundation. Claudia spends her time between Armenia, Quito, and Danville. And she will be speaking about fighting global hunger. Claudia?
Thank you, Elizabeth. Wow, that's just basically, you just gave my presentation for me. I appreciate that. That's a very encompassing view of what I've done in my life. I wanted first to start out with my name, my full name, which is something my husband recommended I do because it shows how different I come from, different worlds. And my full name is Claudia Maria Martinez Concha Aguirre Gaviria Pava. And in Colombia, we like to say the whole full name because it just tells you who you are and who you're from, where you're from. The people know from your last name what towns you come from, who your families are. And when I came to this country, I became Claudia Martinez. That was it. And I changed. And it was a cultural change for me in many ways. It made me who I am. And I was asked to talk about my volunteerism today by Chris, and she said to me, Claudia, why don't you talk about how your background really shaped how you became such an active volunteer, and how it shaped to maybe that was also a product of your upbringing and the fact that you're an immigrant. And I never really thought about it that way, but she hit it on the nail. I really think that the reason that I volunteer so often is because for various reasons. One, of course, is we often emulate what we see at our table. I think it was the lieutenant governor who said it, that when you talk about certain things at the table, maybe it was you, Elizabeth, you tend to think about him and make him part of your life. And my grandmother, I grew up with stories about my grandmother, who was extremely generous and always gave back, always gave to people in need, and always helped out others. And then my father was the president of the Rotary Club, and my mom was involved in a healthcare nonprofit that gave back to needy people if they needed like medical supplies or wheelchairs and such. And so I think having grown up with that background, it made me really consider, what can I do to give back? And of course it was innate. I really think that for me in particular, I like giving back because it gives me more than I give. I get much more in return. I attributed, I think also I developed a sense of empathy that I probably wouldn't have had so strong if I had not been an immigrant, because I came to the United States when I was 15 years old, and my brother and I landed with my parents in Houston, Texas. And it was the first time that I experienced some sort of discrimination. We were not allowed to enter high school at the time in Texas because we weren't a legal resident yet. We were waiting for our permits. We were what we consider the DACAs now. And so I think that just having the struggles to get to college and to be able to study really made me empathize with people who were having a hard time getting their goals met and getting their needs met. And that was my first experience with having to struggle to reach something, and how important it was to have a handout, to have somebody give me a handout to help me. And in my process, I as I grew, I had a lot of people believe in me and reach out and help me. And I want to thank those people. And one of the ways that I thank them is to give back. And while I was in college and grad school, and when I was an undergraduate and also in grad school, I always tried to find opportunities to give back. I joined the Christmas in April program, where we help build homes for the elderly here in Berkeley when I was in grad school. I was also involved in helping with soup kitchens and homeless shelters. And I was a mentor to a young Mexican girl for a year while I was in college. She was a high schooler. And I think it was that mentorship opportunity that really taught me how valuable mentors are. That young woman, I was able to open up ideas for her in a life that she couldn't afford or even knew existed outside of her immediate family. And just working with her gave me it was very rewarding. And I realized how important, why people mentor and why people volunteer, because it is very rewarding. And having that one-on-one contact for me was the first time that I mean, outside of working with the soup kitchens and such, but to be able to really get to know somebody at that level, that personal level, was really rewarding. So I think in my bio, I mentioned that I also worked with California food policy advocates. And why did I go into that type of work, anti-hunger work? I was a nutrition major at Berkeley, an undergraduate at Rutgers, and then I wanted to do something that was beyond teaching people how to eat. I really didn't feel like that was my goal in life. I really wanted to do something broader, more systemic. So I chose public health nutrition, and I really wanted to work in Africa or South America. I ended up working in California in anti-hunger work, which ended up being wonderful. And who would have thought that, growing up as an immigrant, I never thought that America needed anti-hunger work, but it does. There's so much need here in America. And I learned as an advocate for the school breakfast and summer food programs. I visited all the little areas in California. I was in my 20s, and in my car, I would drive to areas up in the Sierra or in Fresno or down by the desert and southern parts of Colombia and California, and there was hunger in all these little towns, and there was need, low-income children who needed food programs. And I learned how to advocate and protect these food programs. The people I worked with really taught me how to work with the legislators to make sure that these policies that protect these safety nets were safeguarded. And that was a very important part of my development. But I also, it was very stressful. So when I got married and I had kids, I realized I couldn't continue this level of work. I didn't have the energy. So I diverted and ended up working in the school system more and doing PTA work. And I worked to protect the paraprofessionals in our schools and worked to make sure that our classes stayed at 20:1. So I led a campaign to maintain our 20:1 ratio. It's funny, it's almost like people can sense when somebody was a volunteer at heart. They can tell if they just ask. And it's like, okay, you can volunteer for this, or they point you. And I was always happy to lend a hand. And if I felt like I knew I could do something, even if I did it badly, I just did it because I felt like that was better than not doing anything. After, of course, the kids grew up, I started thinking about other ways that I could become more involved. And that's when I joined AAUW. And AAUW has been a godsend. I really love working with the women here and contributing to the scholarships for young girls to go to college. And I believe in educating women. I believe that that is the way for all of us to become more equitable. And I also, continue to do my anti-hunger work on the side. When the pandemic came, I started a fund in my grandmother's name to help feed Colombians in the area where my mom lives, Quindío. It's called Armenia Quindío. And it's a small, middle-sized city, but there's a lot of need there because people really took pandemic very seriously. They weren't allowed to leave their homes for months. And so there was a lot of hunger. And people would put little red flags on their windows when they needed food or support. And so the government would come and feed them. And there wasn't enough going around. So we were able to feed about 200 families, individuals, about 50 families in a period of 2 months with a very small amount of money. It was amazing how much a small amount can really make a difference. And it was easy to do. I mean, I just always wonder, I know there's a lot of people doing this kind of stuff. And the more people I meet like this, the more I feel like there's hope for humanity because there are a lot of giving people and a lot of people who step in and help out during times of need. More recently, just to kind of bring it full circle, I've been working more on education, and it's been, again, an opportunity that I'm very grateful to have. We are related to some owners who have a university in Colombia, and they're applying for a grant for USAID to educate the rural community in Colombia, in the Quindío area. And so since I have grant management experience, I may not be the best at grant management, I can provide some guidance. So that's what I'm doing. I'm helping. I'm providing guidance to make sure that we can reach out to the rural children in Quindío, Colombia, with this grant that we're applying for, so that they have the tools they need to be able to study and perhaps go to university and maybe bring their ideas to market and be self-employed or employable in the future. And so that's, I guess, my life in a nutshell. I wanted just to give thanks again to AAUW for inviting me to talk and to share what I've done. And I don't think I'll ever stop getting involved. I can't seem to say no sometimes. And so I will hopefully be able to be of service, which is my life's goal, to be of service in some sort in the future. And being with AAUW, and then also my volunteering with working as a freelancer has been very helpful, and making sure that I do meet those goals. I'm going to stop now because I don't want to overdo. I don't know if my timing is, but I want to introduce now Asha Bajaj, who is a physical therapist, and she's our next speaker. And Dr. Asha Bajaj has 30 years of experience in a variety of settings, including the management and operation of an outpatient practice in Walnut Creek, California, from 1985 to 2004. Asha has served in Bhutan, India, Vietnam, Malawi, Africa, and with health volunteers overseas to train and develop their physical therapy programs. From 2006 to 2013, Asha was involved with acute care in a hospital setting in an outpatient clinic as a locum therapist. Asha has a special interest in women's health and did her doctoral project in the area of bone health and osteoporosis. Asha has been involved with a monthly health education series at the Afghan Elderly Association in Fremont and a health series in the town of Danville. Asha was involved actively since 1993 to 2004 as a clinical associate professor with UCSF Physical Therapy Program and served on the admissions committee. Her professional activities have included serving on the executive board of the Golden Gate chapter at the capacity of PAC and publicity chair, and as a delegate to represent the physical therapists in her area. She's actively involved in the community with women's education and legal advocacy, and has served as the president of the local branch in Danville for AAUW. Welcome, Asha.
Thank you so much. First of all, I want every one of you to give yourselves a pat on the back and recognize that we are celebrating International Women's Day. We come a long way, baby, but we've got a long way to go. And this is what I learned when I was working in many of these countries, that we have a lot to learn from them. However, women are the main decision makers upon whom the health of your children, your community, the next generation depends. You are the backbone of the health of the next generation. And I just want to acknowledge my mother, who, in spite of having a little fall this morning, has come on the program. And she was an inspiration to me. She was involved, again, as Claudia mentioned, Rotary does a lot of work in other countries like India. They were involved with the Polio Plus program. And what I've seen herself do is, you know, domestic care was very accessible, servants were very accessible in India. She had paid for the education of her housekeeper's daughter until she graduated from high school. So we all come from a lineage of women who've carried the torch before us. And hopefully, even if we are the first in some areas, and as Kamala Harris said, hopefully we won't be the last. So historically, we are the decision makers, but our health depends a lot on several factors. We metabolize medications differently. We are different on a molecular basis. Our synaptic pathways, the way we utilize medicine is different. Our hormone environment is different. And for too long, we have had to suffer the consequences of not having enough proper medical research delegated and designated to women themselves. So the same amount of medication that is used for heart disease for a man actually does not apply to a woman. In my own area, during the 90s, for example, there was a rash of computer-related problems, you know, ergonomics, repetitive motion problems. And if you remember, the general idea was be at right angles. And which woman is designed to be at right angles? We just don't have that kind of an anthropomorphic body. So we had to change and modify even our working environment to fit the needs of women. So what we find is that women are healthier in places where policies promote equal access to healthcare and education, clean, safe neighborhoods and workplaces, fair, livable incomes, and the power to participate democratically in decisions that affect our lives. And I can't tell you how many times I've had the husband of a person, especially from South Asia or Africa or even Mexico, walk in with their wives because they do think upon their wife as their property. And whatever you are doing to them or with them ends up being a joint decision rather than their individual decision. So a woman's health reflects both her individual biology and her sociocultural, economic, and physical environments. These factors affect both the duration and the quality of our lives. For example, the life expectancy for women varies according to her race, where she was born, what kind of access does she have to healthcare, and insurance policy. And now it's coming to the point where even having access to the right information and not following the politicized guidance that we are getting on masks and the spread of disease. So it's interesting, we can often think that we are in the developed world. You know, what do we have to worry about? Well, let me tell you, ladies, we still have a very high maternal mortality rate. Our infant mortality is higher than any of the 11 westernized countries that we compare with. And partly it's because of not having proper, adequate and full insurance that we have. So what are the major barriers to women's healthcare? One is medical research itself. It has largely ignored women's health problems. We've been underrepresented in clinical trials. Oftentimes, it's only the male mice that are examined, and the data is written as an aggregate data. They're not reported separately. So for example, we might find that the same digitalis medication might work at a different dosage for a female mouse, which is where most of our research is done, than a male mouse. Healthcare practices. When women try to access their needs for reproductive healthcare, contraception, planned parenthood, there's such a fragmentation in the healthcare system. Everything is politicized. And what do we have as a result? We have unsafe abortions. To have women die today of bleeding, preeclampsia, and things that we thought were a thing of the past is unthinkable. And really something that we as AAUW should push for more equitable practices in that area. Access to health insurance. You know, we saw the unimaginable resistance to Obamacare, and with Mr. Trump's, I would call it a reign, the pulling back of simple mandates that would have assured that more people got the care they need. So you'll be surprised to hear that the #1 killer for us is not cancer of the breast or the uterine system. It's heart disease, ladies. And the reason is that very often the classical symptoms of heart disease are different from men to women. I've had people in my own family ignore a major heart attack because they thought it was heartburn. They took an Alka-Seltzer, it became a full-blown MI, taking away half the heart muscle until they were rushed to the hospital, and then of course the damage was done. How often have you yourself, because you're a caretaker or a grandmother, put your children and your family ahead of you and said, okay, I'll wait for that, you know, the little tweak I'm getting on the side of my head, or, you know, the little twitch I'm getting in my eye, or the mammogram that's been scheduled. So these are priorities that we must consider, because we are the backbone and the carriers of healthcare for the next generation. The next big one is cancer. And ladies, it's not cancer of the breast and the uterus. Would you believe it's lung cancer? Even between non-smoking men and non-smoking women, women die more with lung cancer than they do with cancer of the breast or the reproductive system. Colorectal cancer, melanoma, cancer is the next thing. And then many people who have heart attacks are at a high risk for strokes. More women die of stroke rather than men, although they have equal risk after menopause. Chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, smoking, alcohol, substance abuse, all major threats, and partially because women are more prone to depression. How many of your young people have premenstrual pain that keeps them away from work or school? Or we have symptoms during menopause which force us into depression and mental illness. In fact, it was sort of a revelation to hear from this young lady, Meghan Markle, talk about her issues during pregnancy, where she had suicidal thoughts and could not get any help. She couldn't call the toll line that they were talking about. She had to go through the king's hierarchy to do that. So it's so amazing how political, social barriers exist to getting the healthcare we need. Autoimmune diseases. I can guarantee that at least 20% of women who are attending this program have some form of an autoimmune disease, whether it's rheumatoid arthritis, whether it's lupus, whether it's multiple sclerosis. These are very big issues. Substance abuse, we touched upon, smoking, health habits that have affected especially the older generation because it was considered very cool to smoke at one point. And last but not least, violence. Violence is a major public health problem for American women. More than 4.5 million women are victims of violence each year. Of these women, 2 or 3 are attacked by a relative or someone they know. Women are 6 times more likely to be abused by someone they know and likely to be victims of sexual assault. And we know that in college campuses with that great story of that Stanford grad who has, by the way, reemerged and done a great book. Maybe some people have heard about her. She was amazing. I think her name was Chris Miller, if I'm not mistaken. Reproductive health, of course, is a big issue. Fertility and infertility. Fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue. So our onus is not only to prevent disease, to promote health for the next generation, but also do things to help women all over the world. And we do that through our political activism with AAUW and the equal rights agenda we should all be following. I will stop now because this topic is so big. I've got 50 pages of information to share. And I will now love to introduce Teresa Chong, our next speaker, who has a chemical engineering background. Teresa was born in mainland China, came to the US when she was 11. She is a licensed professional chemical engineer with a degree from Yale University and an MBA. She's been a practicing professional engineer since 1982 until 2014, when she switched her hat and bought a restaurant with her chef husband, Hermes Paulin. They became owners of the Montecatini restaurant in Walnut Creek. She has always been active at the AAUW and the American Institute of Chemical Engineers. In leadership roles, she's been a pioneer. She has been awarded a Gender Equity Award, learned from AAUW, and prepared to take on the Old Boys Network. And she helped bring visibility and recognition to other women in chemical engineering. Teresa is a fellow of the Aicg, which is the Chemical Engineering Association, past president of our local AAUW, and current webmaster, technology committee chair. I did want to put a personal note. We have known Teresa personally through our common love of tennis. Teresa is a generous spirit and always such a good team player.
Oh,
Not very much we can say about many nerds in our group. Her current involvement in the restaurant business has not only given expression to her entrepreneurship, but she's the chief marketing and technology officer there. She is our local wine connoisseur and our resident sommelier. From chemical engineering to the biochemistry of libations, Teresa brings her smarts, her savvy, and her welcoming personality to everything she gets involved in. It's my distinct pleasure to introduce Teresa Chong as one super international woman.
wow. I'm impressed.
Well, it did the job.
Thank you, Asha, for your wonderful introduction. And thank you for the opportunity for me to go down memory lane and dig up some old file of what I did over 20 to 30 years ago with the American Institute of Chemical Engineer, AICHE for short. I graduated from Yale. Oh, just a minute. I graduated from Yale in 1979 and began practicing as a chemical engineer immediately after I got my BS degree. At that time, I believed that doing an excellent job at my work is enough. There is no need to worry about gender in the workplace. I joined the AICG and noticed there was hardly any women in prominent position in the math, science, or engineering field. In my early 30s, I became the chair of the Northern California section of the AICG. And I was pregnant with my daughter, Marissa. I guess I was the first and only pregnant chair they had. Being a mom, I really saw the real gender bias all around it, from toys to storybooks to gender roles. I joined the AAUW and learned and participate in advocacy activity to promote equity for women and girls. I changed my mind, and I believe that merit is not enough to achieve gender equity quickly. We need affirmative action and more. I became our Danville-Alamo-AAUW president in 1993. And I was really entrenched in the AAUW studies and action, while I continued to be active in the Aicg, the Chemical Engineering Institute. The Aicg has 60,000 chemical engineer members from over 100 countries. The members of the Aicg have national meeting annually with 3,000 to 5,000 chemical engineer, professor, and student from all over the US and the world meets. In 1994, the annual meeting was in San Francisco, and I was their first female local general arrangement chair. The night before the meeting started, there was a big dinner where all the executive council members, past and present presidents, local, national, and international leadership, and all the Aicg staff was there. As general arrangement chair, I gave a welcome speech. And instead of just welcoming everybody to San Francisco, I told them about the lack of women in prominent roles in chemical engineering. And we look around the room, and except for the staff, almost all of them were white and senior men. And I said, I hope the people in this room who are movers and shakers of our industry will seek out and promote more women and minority for leadership and management position. After my speech, I felt like everybody's jaw dropped. How dare this woman introduce this foreign topic to our institute? But a few came up to me and said it was about time we have some diversity in chemical engineering. At that time, there was a minority affair committee already, led by some very helpful Black chemical engineering professors, but no standing structure for promoting women in chemical engineering. I passed out flyers with statistics like, at our honors luncheon, where there were 26 people sitting in the head table, and there was only 1 woman and 25 men. Quite a few chemical engineers were willing to join me, and we started building a list of volunteers for our cause. And at that time, the Aicg strategic planning has no mention of equity needs. After that meeting, I was appointed the chair of the Women and Minority Subcommittee of the Professional Development Committee. That committee was originally formed to solve problems such as childcare or problems of 2 career couples. Not exactly my goal, but I changed it. In the next 2 years, I built a network of like-minded chemical engineers and professors, volunteers across the US and in the Bay Area. I wrote the vision and goal statement as a guideline to what we want to do and achieve. We collected data, built task team on communication, diversity training, technology, and awards. And at that time, of the 400 plus institute award presented since 1936, only 2 women chemical engineers received them. And we need to change that. We have many supporters, but we also have many roadblocks along the way. One I remember well. As our work progresses, communication was so important, and I want to share my ideas, thoughts to everyone, including to the executive council. And then I got an email from the Professional Development Committee chair, and I'm the chair of the subcommittee, under that committee. And he said, Teresa, maybe you have not been clear in the past. Maybe I have not been clear in the past. Any communication going outside your subcommittee that discuss the subcommittee or your position must be cleared through me or Scott. There are no exceptions. And I was really take off and I fired back. It is a dark day for AICHE when a committee chair must censor all communication from a subcommittee. I was really mad. That made us work even harder, and I started a petition to dissolve the Women and Minority Subcommittee to form a permanent standing committee of women in chemical engineering, reporting directly to the Executive Council. Of course, that could not happen immediately, but the council approved to form an ad hoc gender equity task force, for which I became chair. Soon, a year or so later, the Women in Chemical Engineering Committee was formed, and I knew I stepped on many toes to get there, so I backed off and let someone else to become chair. Now we have a Women in Chemical Engineering Standing Committee reporting directly to the council with staff support and budget of its own. And I want to share the current, my screen with you. Let me see whether I could do it. Oh, wow. Click, click. Oh, I pick a screen?
Yeah, pick the screen that you want to show.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I told you, close all your other windows. It can be very confusing.
Oh, I could just pick any screen, huh?
Well,
What
pick
happened?
the one that has what you want to show on it.
That does not, but at least I got to my screen. Okay, here. So when you go on aiche.org, that's our engineering institute, this is the home page. They immediately said an ideal place to equity, diversity, and inclusion. I'm really shocked. I haven't seen this, you know, I worked so many years on it, and now their home screen was showing that they want equity and diversity. So I'm so, you know, so happy that this is happening. And this is the screen of the current AICG leadership. Remember I told you that everybody, you know, all these people are all white men. So this is the current AICG leaders. This is a paid position. The executive director and CEO is a woman. That's it. So this is the AIC current leadership, and the executive director is a woman. The current president is a woman. Deborah actually was part of the professional development committee. That she was the only women member when I was doing all this, I was the subcommittee for the women and minority, and now she's the president. The president-elect is a Black woman, and the treasurer is a woman. And then we have 12 director, and 7 out of the 12 director is women. So I think we came a long way. I think we came a long way, and I don't want to take up too much time, but you can roam around, and then if you go to the committees, and then you can see the AICG women is very prominent now. This is the committees, and there's all these committee here, and then Women in Chemical Engineering is a main committee with a big budget and all this good stuff.
One of the things that is important about WIC is that its presence allows women a place to be able to talk about.
Okay, I won't show you the video. So I will stop there, and let me stop sharing my screen. Oh, there you go. Thank you. So thanks to the gender equity knowledge and training from AAUW, we broke the barrier for women in chemical engineering almost a quarter of a century ago. And we're making progress, and there is more to do, of course. So I will stop there. And let me introduce our next part of the program, which is led by our program vice president in charge of our monthly programming, including this one, Betty Felton. Betty is very active in lifelong learning, health care, and is serving as chair of the board of directors of the Contra Costa Regional Health Foundation. She previously taught nursing and health science and was the dean at the Concord campus of Cal State East Bay. And she is also the vineyard manager of Sky Terrace Vineyard. We like our wines. So Betty, your turn.
Thank you, Teresa. I'm not going to speak to you, but I am going to bring up some really interesting questions that were provided in the chat. And if you have a question and haven't asked it, please go ahead and answer. And thank you, Teresa, for your great conversation, and Asha and Claudia. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It was great. I love hearing those stories. They really tell us who you are and how you've evolved. So without further hesitation, I'll bring up 3 questions that I have seen and I first wanted to say that Laura Salisbury sent info early on about the fact that next week the House of Representatives will vote to remove a time limit for the ERA amendment, for the ERA. So this is very exciting news. She asks, as does the National AAUW, that we call or email our representatives to tell them that the Equal Rights Amendment now, that's what we want. We want to really pursue this and make it a reality. So just a little plug, and thank you, Laura, for bringing that up. This is the right group to bring it up to, and please let your representative know. Secondly, Cynthia Seguin asks of Elizabeth Patterson, do you have any ideas, Elizabeth, for keeping residents' health protected from the air pollution, in particular, the air pollution and the changes in our air quality that have occurred because of wildfires? Any ideas?
Well, the air pollution from wildfires is being investigated as we speak by the Air Board, the California Air Resources Control Board, and also UC Davis. In fact, they just had a symposium on this. One of the issues raised about the air pollution is the difference between wildland fires, where there aren't structures, there aren't towns and villages involved, and then it's places like in Sonoma and Santa Monica and parts of Santa Cruz where structures were burned. And it's that's causing the problem because of the melted pipes that are plastic that go into homes, and then all of the furnishings and just what homes are made out of. So it's pretty serious. And as I said, they're investigating it now. The good news is that with a wildfire like we had, where no towns or villages were involved, is that all that smoke seems like it'd be a major issue. In fact, has less of an impact on greenhouse gases than was feared. So now we're concentrating on the issue of the pollution from the structures that are burning. So some of the recent legislation at the state level, and also included in the Uniform Building Code, is to harden up structures, and they're taking a look at how they can make them less toxic if they do burn. The hope is that they don't burn, and that's why building in the right place, that was part of one of the things I could have talked about in land use planning and management. I hope that answers your question. I have a 12-week-old puppy wandering around in my kitchen, which is why I'm in my kitchen. So if I'm constantly looking around, it's because I want to make sure she's not getting in trouble.
Great. Cynthia, did you want to have a response?
No, I just appreciate this issue of pollution and air quality and our health coming to the forefront. Thank you.
So if I could say, I'd like to add on to that. One of those studies that was done by the USPA about 20 years ago, it was kind of in response to Bhopal, which was this huge chemical release in India that killed several hundreds of people. I think it was actually in the thousands. And so naturally, the politicians and legislature and Congress did significant investigation into this. I was actually a subcontractor to a Senate committee because I have worked within the Senate, California Senate, and I did some research. And what turned out, which was kind of interesting, is that these catastrophic events are what the news focuses on. The health threat actually comes from chronic exposure. This is true when pollution goes into water. It's true when you see the constant exposure that people have is life-threatening. It just takes longer to demonstrate that. It's something that US EPA has not been able to convey. And I would like all of us to understand that chronic exposure is the life-threatening event in our lives.
That's really important information. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Welcome.
I'd like to ask the next question, which is for Asha. Asha, has technology allowed us to be more aware of autoimmune disease, or is there a higher frequency of autoimmune diseases? This is the chicken and egg that every healthcare provider gets.
Right.
But I didn't know if you had any comments or ideas for prevention.
First of all, I think you bring up a very good point that women usually do not get all the preventive care or the tests that are required for particular diseases. Unfortunately, if you remember, there was a term called hysteria for women, but I think it all started with the problem with Eve getting the forbidden apple, where women are always blamed to magnifying things, unfortunately. I think technology has helped, but I think part of the problem is too many people are diagnosing themselves with the Googlepedia. And so what you're looking for is getting the right information, but also getting it vetted correctly by your doctors and not trying alternate medications before you understand what the research is and what's really effective or not. Because a lot of these diseases are management problems. They aren't cures. You don't pop a pill and it goes away. Many of these autoimmune diseases are something you manage. So it depends on the stage you're in and what's out there, you know, whether you take a steroid or you don't take a steroid, you know, it's a cost-benefit ratio. So I would say find a good, you're a responsive provider. I have a wonderful female physician that I really enjoy. She's a partner in my healthcare and we can email each other. Bring to the table all the information you have from technology, but then get out of the way. Let your body, the science, and your providers take care of you.
Thank you, Asha. Let's see, I don't know. Is it Suzanne? Are you the one that asked Asha? Yes, Suzanne Antone. Any response? Hearing none, I'll go on to the next question. It comes from Gail Murray. And Gail Murray asks Elizabeth if she has read Bill Gates's new book about climate change and with big investments and new inventions. There was also a piece on, I think on 60 Minutes with Bill Gates in interviewing. So Elizabeth Patterson, would you like to take that one?
So hopefully you can hear me over the squeaking toy here. Yeah, so no, I haven't read the book, but I have seen him on TED Talks and other interviews, and I totally agree with him. Some of the geotechnology is actually one of the most feasible projects that we have in California. We have a unique and rare kind of soil rock formation that can capture carbon. And there are some other strategies that he's looked at. He is a man of substance and a serious person who looks at these things, not in a wild-eyed fashion, but with good background and good research. It goes with, yes, we can solve some of the problems, but it's so serious that we have to do everything. It's not, we'll wait for the technical solution. We have to do everything. And it isn't up to the individual to sacrifice their life. It is up to the governments and corporations to do the right thing. And so far, they haven't done an exemplary job, where I see a lot of people working really, really hard to cut down on their contribution to the problem. So I want to see much more done by government and industry, and people not feeling quite so guilty for what they're doing.
Thank you so much. And finally, I have another it says for all the branches. How can our branches work to provide opportunities for immigrant women in particular, or women living in poverty? How can the branches make things happen? And maybe Claudia, you could take that one first. You have any ideas?
Thanks, Betty. Well, I think I was thinking back at that question and thinking about the work that Contra Costa Regional Health Foundation does, and how it reached out to a lot of the community organizations that are available, many of which I didn't know existed until I joined. I was lucky enough to work with the foundation. But I know that there's a lot of opportunities out there for us to get involved with CBOs, community-based organizations, and volunteer. And there's one organization in particular that can, when you call it, it'll tell you who works in what sector, what areas, 211.org, I think. And that's the website, that's the phone number. So if you dial 211, or if you go to the website 211.org, they'll give you a list of agencies in your community. And I think that's true from almost every county. Is that true, Betty? Since you are the standing member of the board member?
Yeah, well, we were just on a conversation, because 211 is now with some funding from a number of sources, including the John Muir Health Foundation, et cetera. We are working regionally to work with Marin County, and particularly in Sonoma County. And wouldn't it be great to have a regional 211 resource opportunity? With technology, there's an example right there of how technology can really make this happen, and happen region-wide instead of just our own county. So that's all in process, which is really exciting.
Yeah, thanks.
Anybody else have any questions that just have arisen in this wonderful, wonderful presentation? Tina Gallagher, want to unmute yourself, Tina? Oh, no. Oh, I'm sorry. Anybody? Well, Chris and Cynthia, what do you think? Would you like to sort of close us out?
Sure. I'd like to start by thanking everybody for their inspiring stories, and it sure was a walk down memory lane, I'm sure, for many of us, of battles that we have fought, and we still have the scars. But what a reminder that we've accomplished a lot these past few decades, and there's certainly many challenges ahead. And I think of John Lewis and his phrase about keep making some good trouble, and we have to keep fighting these battles, and it's a real call to action. I think it's an exciting time in our lives, with great opportunities ahead. In that light, I wanted to share that we have some donations to fund a membership for Lieutenant Governor Elaine Kunalakis, so that she can get to know AAUW a little bit better, because we think it's really important to have her voice join ours in Sacramento and on a national scale. I'm reminded too how important it is for us to call our legislators, to attend their town hall meetings, to write letters to the editor, to make phone calls, to follow up on the alerts that we get from AAUW regarding public policy. And I salute everybody listening who has done all of these things and more in their lives. So anybody else, for the good of the group, have something that they would like to share before we close? Chris?
I'm so inspired by the speakers we heard tonight. This, again, the point of connection of AAUW. You know, we have so many members with these stories in our midst. And I'm so thankful that our members were willing to share them with us and really give us inspiration to continue on our efforts and become stronger in our own volunteerism. And what's a great way to celebrate International Women's Day. And I loved the international flavor that we got to it. This is a global effort of all the women. It's just wonderful to be a part of that. And I'm so appreciative to AAUW and to our members tonight. And I look forward to many more programs like this in the future.
How about a round of applause for everybody?
Yeah.
Woohoo!
Thank you.
Speaking of that, Chris, could I put in a plug for our April program to whom?
Please do, yes.
I'd like everybody to be invited. It's open to all. And this is like the sequel to tonight. On April 21, we're gonna have three other women talk about their encore careers. Encore careers are careers after 50. And we're now learning that many, many, many women and men are having significant career transitions into encore careers, kind of like Teresa, going from chemical engineer to restaurateur. So, and wine connoisseur. So these are going to be 3 more stories and 3 more opportunities for you to come together, ask questions, and hear about the lives of some pretty interesting women and what they've done from the time they started up through now, after 50. So join us on April 21st. We'll have some publicity going out, and on our behalf, all of us, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you. And I have to process the video, and I'll try to get it posted by tomorrow or the next day, but I put the link to the page on our website where you can find the video in the chat. And
plugging April programs, our next program is actually on the 20th of March, and we have a lot of poets in our group. So we're going to look at our website, the Benicia-Vallejo AAUW, and come listen to some poetry. We have some great poets in our group.
Ooh, wonderful.
Cool.
Last year we had a really great event, well attended and really fun. It's amazing.
Fantastic.
So March 20th, come to our poetry.
Thank you.
And I must say that Jan has done some wonderful work in our branch in terms of helping understand how important it is for us to be allies to each other, how we build those coalitions in those networks to fight the challenges of today. So a lot of leadership development going on through AAUW in all of our branches.
Okay. Well, thanks everybody.
My husband has a glass of wine waiting for me. So
Yeah.
have a good evening, everybody. It's just been a delight to have a joint program, and extra special kudos to Elizabeth and Claudia, Asha and Teresa, and to all of the people who helped put this together. So take care, everybody. Stay safe. Get your vaccinations, wear your masks, and we'll do something again next year.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.